Great. I think we are. Great. Hello, everyone. I think we are live and we are global. Yeah, so I think let's start today's live. Manas, do you want to start?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is our fourth installment of Monetization Monthly webinar. And in this webinar, we are talking about ad networks, mostly around cookieless ads, and also about like how online marketplaces can benefit from on-site monetizations through ads. I don't know if I did any justice saying that, but Mohammad, Nishan, you can add on to it.
Yeah,
you guys are an expert in this field.
Great.
There is an evolution happening in the industry in terms of kind of going away from cookie-based, and we'll go into that a little bit more. We'll explore some of the complexities of these SSPs and DSPs that drive a lot of kind of the ads world, and then hopefully we'll get a sneak peek of some algorithms that drive it.
Great.
Very quick review. Yeah, very quick review of the previous sessions. So session one was we kind of talked about what e-commerce is and kind of any distinctions between retail, if at all, the different kinds of algorithmic problems that e-commerce and marketplaces face. And then we talked about extending these concepts to general marketplaces. Then in session two, we went into a deep dive of COVID, the impact that it had, the kinds of issues that people ran into, as well as kind of things you could do to prepare for such scenarios. We also briefly talked about privacy and personalization, how oftentimes these are compared with one another, but ways you can kind of build while having both of them. And then session three, we took a slightly different turn. We went into the blockchain world with our guest speaker, Elton Shidula, talking about how marketplaces can leverage the blockchain. So with that, Mohammed.
Great. Okay, thanks, Nishan and Manas, for introducing today's live. And audience, I mean, we are actually live and global. Please, if you have a question, please feel free to ask us at LinkedIn, YouTube, also Instagram. You can always email us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that is coming. But let's start without further ado, go to the cookie and cookieless world. So I think let's start with the cookies. So what is the cookies? So that was actually interesting for my experience. I mean, like I had some ideas about cookies. I heard about it. And I can confess, actually, I learned this one from my son. I mean, he's like 9 years old, and he was putting some cookies actually on some website that he was designing. And then, I mean, before that, I didn't have, so I knew about cookies and something that is there, but actually, then I used it for the predictive website, and I used cookies. And it is actually very simple stuff. So the idea is that this is some variables that you will save. Now the question is that where do you save? So when you, we want to just talk a little bit about cookies. I think that is interesting if you are writing any web program or something like this. That is a useful one actually to use. So when you run a program, like when you go to a website, this is the thing that happens. They have some kind of front-end program, often in JavaScript, that it is, it has HTML and others, that it is run on your browser. So if you go, for example, with Chrome or Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, I think nowadays, or like Firefox, then Firefox in some sense is the OS, or Chrome is the OS that runs this program. So this program that it runs, it can actually have some variables which will be saved in the OS, in that case actually to the browser. These variables are indeed cookies. So, and each, this is like a particular application that when somebody comes there. For example, you will go to your bank, I don't know, Chase Bank or Bank of America or others, and then you will log in. And then you will go in another, you will bring another tab, in Google. I'm very bad at managing the tabs. So that's the reason that after some time, I just close everything and I open it again. And then I lose that Bank of America. So I want to add another Bank of America. And then I say, oh, it is without login. Actually, I'm going to the website. Why does it happen? This is exactly because of the cookies. So each of the first one that you are running, when you log in, this program saves some information about you. For example, it says what was the account ID or some possibly some encoded version of that in some variables. And these variables often they have expiration time. So these are generally for cookies. Now, if you go to another page, just next, in a very short period of time, then that, again, it runs the program in that, the JavaScript in this, a browser, check whether those variables exist on the browser, which is in this case operating system in some sense. And if the variables exist and they are not expired, then they get the ID from them. Now it knows that from this ID that you have logged in already. So then let you actually continue the work without any need of logging. Now, interestingly, if you are going to say Chase or Bank of America with your Google Chrome, and then you use Microsoft Edge to go there, even instantly, it asks for a password, username and password. That's the thing, that there is not much communication between Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome in that sense. These are in some sense two operating systems. So that's the difference of cookies. That is generally it's used a lot for password saving and the fact that you don't need to actually log in again, etc. So that's the idea about cookies. Now let's talk a little bit about cookies and advertisements. So it may happen that you will go and search at Google about, I don't know, a car. And I don't know, a particular type of car. And then you will go to CNN and you will see actually the same type of car advertisement came for you. That's quite surprising. How does it happen? But if you know there's this concept of variables that I mentioned that are saved, then it is actually easy. When you go to Google website, it saves, and then you can save lots of variables, lots of cookies that you will save on this Google Chrome. And then you go, and now there's actually lots of sites that you will go, they will tell you that, okay, we are using cookies, and in some sense they are using these variables, they are saving these variables. And in some sense, I mean, they make the life easier because I don't want to log in every time when I go to Bank of America. There might be some issues that you can, some other ways that you can do it from backend. It's not that trivial. Instead of saving essentially in the front end, you might be able to do some in the back end, but it is not quite trivial. So, but here the issue is that when you go to Chrome, all programs, all websites that comes and run it, they have actually access to this set of variables that you have it. And they only need to know the name of this variable and check whether it exists or not. So when you go, for example, to Google and you will search something, Google actually saves a lot of these variables. Now, when you go to CNN, actually CNN is also run by Google. We will talk more about it. So CNN has some kind of advertisement maybe in the corner of it that actually is run by AdX often. AdX is the generally, this is the global ad exchange run by Google for display advertisements. And that's, I think it's something like around 40% of the market, if not more. So there are other ones, Rubicon is another one that is, I think, Open Ads, or some other thing like Open, I forgot the name, Open something. That's another one. So there are a few of other such kind of ad exchanges, but the major one is actually Google. Google will come and, now again, so this is Google at Google, but again, these are not necessarily connecting with each other. But this Google AdX that is running, this advertisement, when you go to CNN, again, for this particular advertisement, there is some Java program that is running. That comes and read the cookies that you have. And based on the searches that you have done or other, because it has access actually to these cookies, it will go and read what are this information. Then send this information this is in some sense CNN, it is now playing the role of a publisher. This publisher actually sends this one. So this is a program that is run on the publisher. It can be actually CNN or it can be Google program. And then this will be sent to SSPs that we will talk more about them. And then it goes to DSPs that actually the DSPs, they are putting some kind of advertisement. But all this information about cookies that they collected, they will mention that one actually to advertisers. And they select how much bid they want to put it for this ad. And there is some auction that was running. It was used to be first, I mean, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, it was first price, then it became second price. And then since 2-3 years ago, now everyone almost doing first price. And that, based on this information, based on all these cookies, they are sending ad creative. And this ad creative is the one that you are seeing at CNN. So that's the whole idea that you will see between the cookies and advertisement. These are very important ones that people are using a lot. And this is actually more than that. Also, for example, if you go to Amazon, if you go to Google, to Facebook, all of them, generally, they also keep your ID. So there is some kind of, companies that they are aggregating these things. And you know that if you are this username of Facebook, it is corresponding to this username of, for example, Amazon, or this username of Overstock or other companies. So in that sense, how you will go with this ID, they know that you are this person. And they have lots of information about you because this information that they kept. Now they are sending the best advertisement for you based on that. And best advertisement in some sense is maybe mainly for them because you want to click and purchase, but at the same time, they are not irrelevant to you. So that you will like it essentially. Maybe it's a new car that you like. And that's the way that, I mean, there are lots of actually, it's quite a complicated scenario that is going on between different companies, and all of them, they are doing that. I mean, they generally is like between, I don't know, 20 milliseconds to 120 milliseconds for this display ad. They might be a bit slower than regular ads. Maybe on-site ads would be like maybe 20 milliseconds. For these guys, they have it like 120 or something like this. Even like, for example, if you go to, I don't know, Predicta website or others, you will see that sometimes the page is coming, but the ad didn't come because such a complicated things is going back in the backends. And this is a network. We will talk more about them. And as a result, you will see an ad. Now, this is, of course, a violation of the privacy can be considered violation of privacy for users, because you will go to some website, maybe you don't want to know about it. There was actually some studies a few years ago about Target. They were doing this. So the people were going there, the people may bought some just maybe one stuff or look at something for pregnancy. And it was interesting. They were using this information to send them something after the fact, like, for example, crib or other things. And this is some kind of, you just search something and they know a lot about you. And these are some of the things that you may not want to actually release. That was this idea of the cookieless world that in some sense, Apple iOS had started that. And this was a big issue that we discussed about, Apple in some sense, as we discussed in, I think, the first one, somehow used this idea to don't allow advertisement and essentially put Facebook, Google, or I don't know, Snap and others in a bad shape. At the same time, essentially gets more money out of it because now people couldn't advertise well. So you need to, if there's some app is running, you need to pay for it. And part of that pay actually goes to Apple. That we discussed it actually before. But they had this concept of privacy that these cookies cannot be shared. And this is a cookieless world. It was supposed to be actually in 2020 that they start, like Google Chrome starts it. It has not started, it has been delayed. It's not that obvious things. And one of the things that I mentioned, for example, something regarding the password, that somebody, keeps actually make sure that if you log in with a different tab, you don't need to log in. And as I mentioned, there might be some ways to do it in the backend, but these are not trivial ones, and there might be delays. So there are some of these issues that it is not easy. And of course, Google at the same time is using somehow this cookies itself to do better advertisement. So it wants to do it such that there is no issue in that regard. Okay, so I think I went a bit too far, but I
No,
explained the whole story about cookies. Great. Yeah, I think Nishan, do you want to add anything about this?
Yeah. I think this was basically an overview of like a bulk of the things we're gonna like dive into a little bit more detail. I thought it'd be useful to kind of give a little bit of historical context on cookies. So essentially, we regard like 1983 as when the internet was officially created, right? And then cookies came into existence like not too much later on. So the early people, the first concept of a cookie was created in 1994 on Netscape, which is very popular at that point in time. And in 95 was when the patent for the cookie was created. And almost immediately, the Financial Times had declared cookies to be unsafe. So, this kind of conversation about safety and privacy was something kind of concern from way back ahead. And as the story goes, like the cookies were initially created for e-commerce companies to house their carts. And way back, like this used to be a lot of information to store on the servers. So this became a way to essentially distribute storage across the users' computers as well. Obviously, like now we've seen things evolve drastically where storage is not that much of a concern. It's mostly about the kinds of information we get and that can be shared across companies. But yeah, roughly around like 97, there was like a directive to block third-party cookies as well. But then we've kind of swung back and forth in terms of whether we consider cookies to be safe. But roughly around 1999, that's when the advertising world really started picking up on cookies. And then since then, it's become like, super widespread, right? So we're talking about from like roughly 99, 2000 to now it's like 2020, 22. So more than 20 years before like drastic kind of action has been taken. And as kind of Dr. Mohammed mentioned, there has been lots of action from 2017. Apple's been doing some tracking prevention stuff on Safari. Mozilla was on the same boat as well. And then Google announced plans to phase it out by early 2023 is kind of the time they're talking about now. There's also to be aware of, there's like GDPR and other of these like laws and directives that have been passed recently. And GDPR essentially, it's regulating the use of cookies. So you cannot store user cookies without the user's consent. And a lot of these laws have been kind of adopted in the US as well, which has led to currently, I think this is a very unstable middle ground we're in right now, which is almost every website you go to, you get this pop-up saying, is it okay for us to save cookies? And the implementation of that is not consistent. And, they try very hard to get you to say yes in terms of cookies. So we know like it's evolving. We know cookies probably will not live the same way for much longer. And then the question is like, okay, what form is this going to exist in the future, right? One of the mechanisms that has gotten like some traction in the past is kind of this idea of the universal ID, which is a server-based implementation of the same kind of content we would get on a cookie, but not stored on the user's browser. So I'll pause there.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, sorry. I mean, I'm looking actually about the questions and others. Please feel free to ask questions again at YouTube or LinkedIn, especially. We are live in all of these things: YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I got actually one question from Instagram that Nishan actually already answered it. Like, when was the start of the cookie times? And that actually he just answered that. And so one other thing that Nishan mentioned it was important is the fact that nowadays you will go to every website, they are asking, and actually this is a multiple times because I think they cannot actually, this is also an issue. They don't know whether you have visited or not, or maybe they try to restrict it. They may ask you again and again. Why do they ask again and again? So I answered already to this website because of cookies. Because if they could save it, I mean, maybe they have restricted their things. I think this idea of that we want to go to a cookieless world become more and more important. And so these people essentially, or these companies, they try to see what can they do such that they are using less cookies. Because if becomes a cookie-less world, then they cannot actually use some of these cookies. So it's better to get used to it. And do you want to add anything about cookie-less world?
So yeah, I think like the fundamental thing here is, right, like first party data is fairly easy to collect in today's world. You know, there's lots of technology that's standard out there for websites and companies to collect information on what you do on their website. The challenge comes in the advertising world because and the advertising space has gotten really massive, right? Advertising is what drives kind of the revenue of companies like Google, Facebook, a lot of Amazon, many kind of retailers, e-commerce companies at this point in time. So, and to be able to serve kind of good advertisements, you need this information to be shared across the advertiser network. And like as Dr. Mohammad had talked about, we've evolved to currently having these complicated kind of systems and companies that provide multiple kinds of needs in the advertising space. So essentially, let's say you have a website for some, for some things you're selling, you're a marketplace, and you have lots of users coming to your website. It can be any kind of website. You can have a design blog, maybe you can have, whatever it is, you have lots of people coming to your website, and you want to show advertisements to these folks. So what you will do is, put this. So in advertising parlance, you're now a publisher. You will say, I have this slot in my website that I would like to auction off to the highest bidder. So essentially, as a publisher, you're saying, I have, this piece of, this slot that I would like people to serve. Of course, you would want the most relevant content to be surfaced there. So from there, it goes to the supply side platform, which is supply side platform takes this particular placement and then puts it out on an auction to say, this is the information I have on this slot. Who would want to pay to put their content here, right? And on the other side, then there's a lot of demand side platforms which kind of are keeping track of this user engagement history. So across all of the users, they're looking at, okay, what is this user interested in? And this is where they're leveraging a lot of cookies and information based on that to say this topic or these kinds of things are going to be most relevant to this user. And therefore they, pick the potentially most relevant, highest bidding. There's again lots of things that go into those algorithms. They pick the ad they think is most relevant, and then as Mohammad had mentioned, within this latency of 20 milliseconds or so, that gets sent back to the publisher and therefore gets displayed on the website. So this is kind of the bread and butter of how the bulk of advertisement works in today's world. And Google's AdX drives a large portion of this right now. But there are again other initiatives, other companies that do this as well. One recent concept that's come about is header bidding, which is when you're loading the website on the head, which is the first part of the website request, you can make a call out to multiple of these bids from your website, and therefore potentially get higher quality and higher paying ads. So this essentially pushes more of the control on the publisher side, because previously they would just put a call out, whatever got accepted and answered, they're forced to kind of display it. So these kind of header bidding mechanisms allow for more control on the publisher side. Previously, it was kind of Google had a lot of control over that because they were the one big standard in terms of the ad exchange to use. But this header bidding allows you to use multiple ad exchanges now. So this is again a fairly still evolving landscape. But to give you kind of a general idea, there's a few kinds. So the biggest factor that people consider is relevancy, right? Is this content relevant to the user? And like the more relevant the content is, everybody wins. Customers find what they're looking for, and you don't piss off your customers by kind of showing things that are not relevant. Some other kinds of things, like one thing that's been then spend a lot of people that spend a lot of time implementing is this concept of frequency capping. So essentially the idea of frequency capping is like, try to not show the same ad to the same user multiple times. So you can imagine, right? Like when these ad networks become centralized, as a user, when you're going to Wayfair, and then you go to Overstock, and then you go to Amazon, and you go to like a number of other websites, if they all run off of the same ad exchanges, and the algorithms have determined that you like a particular kind of content, there's the danger of like that same content being shown to you over and over again. And I would say like that looks very creepy, right? It's like all of these users, you're like somehow they're all tracking you and showing you the exact same thing. So one thing they implement is frequency capping, which is don't show the same ad to the user multiple times. So again, for these algorithms to work, you need information of what the user is doing across different websites that they're going to. And so this becomes kind of this dual problem where, on one hand, you want to preserve privacy for the user, you want to share the least amount of information possible, but on the other side, if you don't do that, because of how the landscape is, because of the companies that work in this space right now, like it's very difficult to not show similar content. So so then you get less effective ads. And another one thing, like these DSPs, demand side publishers, a lot of times they're used for retargeting stuff. So you go to these demand side platforms because they have a lot of information on users, and therefore they allow for like retargeting these users better. So if you send them a piece of marketing content today, and then a couple of days later, you want to make sure like the user has, is reminded of you again because of just how the human brain works, right? Like you have to kind of remind people over and over again for it to feel comfortable, because then they acknowledge your brand, they recognize your brand, so they're more likely to purchase from your brand. So from a marketing perspective, it becomes an effective mechanism. So kind of because of these reasons, again, they're like, I think, people certainly did not see how cookies would be so instrumental to driving the ads networks and kind of how ads operated. But in today's world, it's kind of become a really essential component of how the ad industry operates. And so, as like people are getting more aggressive about moving away from cookies, the question is, what is a mechanism that can work? What's a reliable mechanism? And so some of these mechanisms that have come about are this concept of like a unified ID. So essentially, could we have one ID that represents a user, which lots of companies want for reasons that a lot of times can benefit the user as well. What can these companies do to consistently tag the user and then use information about them? So there's this concept of the unified ID, and essentially what they're trying to do is have some kind of server-side implementation of this and align on some kind of protocol or standard that multiple of these companies uses. So again, cookies were so widespread because once you had these standardized ad exchanges and they published a format, everybody could leverage that same format. So they're trying to create this new open source format to track the user and still go about with serving high quality ads in the cookieless world.
Great. Yeah, actually, we had one question. I mean, I was checking the questions on other than different platforms. And one of them was about universal ID or unified ID. Yeah, so I think I want to add a little bit about this universal ID. So I talked briefly about this idea that these cookies that the different programs like Amazon, Google, Facebook, and anything that you will log in, they are putting some cookies currently, and they will mention some IDs or some encoding of your ID with them. This is unique, and that is important, especially for logging, because you don't want to log in if you order in another page at another tab, essentially at Google Chrome, then you can actually use the same ID that you had it and just go for checkout, etc. And there are some companies that they try to actually find and understand that this ID at Google and this ID at Facebook and this ID at Amazon, all of them are the same. Good. Now, as this idea that let me actually add these things. I can, confess that before, I was working on advertisements a lot, especially in terms of research. Back on, around 2000, even 3, 4 or something like this with Microsoft. And then I was with Microsoft or Google, but I think I got much better sense of it when I was at Amazon. And actually I was working with the team that was doing display ads. I was in different teams, sponsor product, on-site monetization, but this particular team that, I could actually understand what is going on in this kind of advertisement network. I had even, some startup on that, but I think I didn't have such a nice understanding after joining this. So I appreciate actually this experience, and I want to tell you a little bit about it. Actually, this is we can go about advertisement. Probably it is just more than this session. We will talk more about them, but these are very nice things is going on. It's actually, the people may not, if you know that, you may read something, but reading is different from doing it, especially in this particular case. Like, yes, you may go and read Python things and then you do it. Here it's not like that. You really need to understand what's going on. I said, we call it advertisement network because it is a network. It's not actually like, it is not more, it sometimes may be considered marketplace, but it is a more network. And what is the network? Network is much more general. Like generally when you have bipartite graph or marketplaces, these are the users, these are like the, for example, sellers, and you try to match them. But here's much more than this. It's actually quite complicated things about networks of this advertisement entity that we will talk about them. But before that, I wanted to just add something about the unified ID and universal ID. So as I mentioned, this matching that happened, and there are several companies that were doing it for the cookie when you have cookies. Now the idea for this universal ID or unified ID is, I think unified ID is the one that Trade Desk is using as one of the main DSPs. And by the way, SSP means supply side platform for advertisement, and DSP means a demand side platform. And like supply ones are the one that they are essentially generating more advertisement, not necessarily themselves, but lots of them actually getting it through publishers. And the demand side are the one that they are putting bids such that they can win some of this advertisement as well. Now, this concept of like a unified ID, and as I mentioned, Trade Desk is one of the biggest demand side advertiser demand side platforms. They have the particular name Unified ID. I think they have Unified ID too, but they are coming all from this universal ID. So the universal ID is that, okay, we cannot have cookieless one. However, the people still, they can log into websites. So if they can log into Facebook, they can log into Google, Amazon, etc. And when you you log in, by default. So this is also interesting thing. When you go and log into one of these websites, you can, I can make you assure that they are using every bit of information that have about you to do advertisement. And this is somehow, it is well known. So you cannot say, okay, I want to go to Amazon and I want to do it privately. That does not happen. At least I don't know any website. Potentially, maybe in the future, they have also, nowadays, I think you have this kind of a website, like browsers that you can mention that I want to do it in a private mode and nobody understands it. This is essentially means no cookies or etc. But lots of these companies, Facebook, you will go that the people know you. You cannot go there and say that I don't want that anyone notice me or something. So by default they get this information, and the information will be shared with the different networks. Not only they have this information, but they may share it with other companies as well, part of it. And there is not much restrictions. Generally, if you read this fine print, they are mentioning that by using this website essentially for free, we need to get, there is no free lunch as we discussed. We need to get, some money. So when you go and log in with this website, then they have the full capability on you. So that is the one that for on-site advertisement. When you go to Amazon, they are getting every bit of information from you. Or when you go to Facebook, they have every bit of information about you, or the same Google, such that they are doing the actually very precise ad target. So in that sense, this kind of cookieless world does not change that much if you are within one particular network. And interestingly, among these companies, Amazon became very big. I think, I don't know, it went from, in the 4 years, maybe it went from 8 billion to now 32 billion, essentially. They are now releasing actually the advertisement. So they become big. Why? Because Amazon is a company that actually is doing advertisement on site. Lots of people are going there. They have lots of people who are visiting the website, and they are using all this information. And given the iOS issue, lots of these iPhones, the people cannot, this company's advertisement company cannot target well, then naturally they are going to some places like on-site, for on-site monetization. Of course, Amazon is a big one because they get lots of people that they can bid on that. Now what about the other companies? So this is the issue that I mentioned. Amazon has this information and can use this information. This idea of universal ID is that let's have a unique ID for each person. Okay, we cannot do this one through cookies anymore, but when the people log in, and generally this is the idea, they are using the email address. They get the email address and they encode it into some unique number. So you don't see actually the email when you log in this ID. Your email will not be good, but some somehow compressed form or some encrypted way of your ID actually is your email. So email is the main ID that will be used and will be shared between these companies. So the idea of universal ID is that each person who is coming and logging at Facebook, Google, etc., if these companies, they can share this information about this person, then they have lots of information about this person. And this is somehow is illegal. I think they may add some kind of fine print things if it is not already there, that yes, we may share this one with the other network, etc. In that case, these are the big guys, they can come together and they share the information. Now, what is the good things here? So then somebody say, okay, what is the difference between this and the cookieless world? Still, I generally go to big companies, and then when I go to big companies, these are the one that is the cookies there, and they are getting it anyhow in the cookieless world. So if you are doing through email, then the same thing happens. The main issue is, the main benefit here is that it would be transparency. So here, of course, you can say that I don't want to use my cookies, etc. Frankly speaking, they put it in I think a smart way for them and maybe bad way for users. What do they, nowadays you will go to a website, they say, okay, we will use the cookies. Do you accept it or not? If you say no, then you will go to setting. And nobody wants to go to setting because it does not let it go that you will go there. Then you need to go and check. And then everyone say, okay, I will let her know because I don't know what is the complicated thing because it's after this setting, etc. So it's not the case that they are allowing that you use that, somehow they force you to allow them to do that. But here, so in some sense, but you don't know exactly what are the information that they are sharing. The good things about this kind of universal ID or unified ID is that when you have this this email ID, then users actually can log in here and they see what type of information about them has been shared between the companies. And they have some control over that. That's a good thing. Of course, you may want to say that you should not, I don't know currently there is such a thing that you say, I don't want any information from Facebook is shared with this company. I'm not so sure that these companies even allow you to do that. But possibly you can say that, okay, maybe no sharing of information, but probably after some time you will get some bills that, sorry, we didn't get any money from you. So you are using your website for free, so you need to pay something. Or the worst thing is that you get some advertisements which are not necessarily relevant to you. And they are just sending some irrelevant advertisement, and you get essentially upset, okay, at least I get some good advertisement out of it. Yes, so for this universal ID, the users can log in and these companies that they are sharing. And then they have a control that which part it should be shared, which part should be not shared, hopefully. And this is still under construction. So this is just, I will say an idea, as I mentioned, Trade Desk, and there is another company, LiveRamp, that these are the two main things. Trade Desk especially is very important because they are somehow, I think, one of the most major DSPs. Like Amazon is a DSP, Google is a DSP, Facebook is DSP. All of them are somehow is a DSP, but they are something special about Trade Desk or this other company. So they have this concept of unified ID, but it's still an idea. It's not clear that whether companies, big companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, they are participating in these things. Because if they don't participate, you don't gain that much. You really need these big companies. I mean, then for question is that whether Amazon wants to do that. And actually, you can think about, I always say that you should see the whole world as a game. So the issue that for Amazon, now they gain a lot because the users are going to their website. Advertisers go there because they have lots of information and they can get better, essentially, ROAS, like or ROI, like essentially better return of the money that they are using for advertisement. So Amazon may not want to participate because now it causes actually more money goes to Amazon. If there is such a unified ID, then it is not that much beneficial to Amazon, probably. Or maybe they are participating in a very limited time or limited capacities. So this is the idea. It's not clear that how big will be that. Of course, Trade Desk or this other, like maybe less known LiveRamp, these are the companies that they are pushing for that. But how much will happen? I mean, that's an interesting idea. And as I mentioned, companies have a control on that, and also Amazon and like users also have control on that. And that would be a great, benefit if it happens. But we don't know whether it happens. I think the idea is that currently the people, one good thing, the good thing is that when you do these things, like for example, when you get an ID that, this guy is now in this, you see, when I'm going and I'm seeing CNN, this is the information that is sent essentially to the DSP, the one who puts bid advertisements. This is the user that we know that. This user, from the cookies that I have on my website, they can possibly get it. Who is this user? There's still lots of them actually unknown users. So you don't know who is this user. And generally, if they are unknown users, the people may not want, like the people here, this company may not want to actually do advertisement because they may actually put the advertisement, they pay it, but you don't know who is this user, and you don't gain essentially any return for your advertisement. So this user that you will say, who is this user, is very good actually. If you, like currently with the cookieless world, you can get some approximation who is this user. And lots of the time, actually, maybe it's something like, I think my experience, it was like somehow 1/3 of the time, maybe a bit more or less, you don't know who is this user actually. And so in some sense, you may not want to even bid for this user because you don't know that. If you know this user, it means that you know exactly these IDs that it has it on different companies. And then you want to put bid. Now, if the good thing is that now, if you have this kind of unified ID, then you know actually the ID of this guy for sure. So the precision of putting advertisement becomes much better. Of course, the whole idea that whether it happens or not, I think this is generally now is mentioned that the companies that they are providing using this unified ID, you may want to put it 5 to 10% to try it. But unfortunately, again, as I don't know, say unfortunately or fortunately, at this point, it is mainly an idea. It has been maybe used with some companies, but it's not a global thing that everyone uses that. So that's the thing that I wanted to add for this kind of a unified IDs. Do you want to add anything, Nishan?
Yeah. So I think one question here, right? Like, it's since this is still evolving, like it's definitely like we haven't seen like the big companies like Amazon and Google really adopt it, but also there's this big push for like, because at least like the communication around this is around the user benefits of it, of moving away from cookies. So one thing I think they offer is the ability to opt out when you have a user ID. Question I have is like, you know, how do you think this is going to evolve, and how, like, in which scenarios are the users going to get more of what they're looking for, which in this case is privacy, right? What does that scenario look like?
Yeah, so I think we have that's another question. Actually, we got it, and somebody asked. I mean, we want to know more about advertisement on Web3. Exactly. So actually, we had this discussion on like previous time about Web3
with LTE.
Yes, again, I mean, that is interesting. The Web3 itself is also some idea. Some people, as we discussed, they don't believe it is such a concept of Web3, but some people believe. And it is interesting, actually. I want to add to that. So what was the idea of Web3 is that essentially we want to have a very distributed, not one person can control that. However, this was the idea about, you know probably about Ethereum, and we discussed that this proof of work versus proof of stake. Proof of work actually was a good thing. So if you have mined any Ethereum or something like this, you know that, for example, Ethermine is the one that I think the people use it. I used it as well. Now, from September 15, you cannot actually mine anymore. Why? Because it went to this proof of stake. And I want to come to this concept because it is important. So this was the proof of work. That was the good thing, that anyone can essentially do the mining for Bitcoin or Ethereum or others. Now you cannot do that. The only people who can do that is the people who have a stake. And the stake here is, I think the latest one is that you need to have at least $100,000 in a stake in like Ethereum or similar things, such that you can actually do some kind of mining and you get more. And if you have higher money, then your stake is higher. You can actually get more money. This is also interesting. So now at least you need to have 100K. So it means that you should have a stake. You cannot not anyone can now mine these guys. You need to have a stake. And even then, when they try to give this advertisement, like when they want to give who is mining, they are considering who has higher stake, and they are doing randomly according to that. That person gets higher. So rich becomes richer. That was exactly somehow against the idea of distributed one, that everyone can become rich. Why they have done it, I think the reason is that efficiency. They said, okay, you need to solve currently, you are using some hashing functions or some kind of, you need to essentially compute some math problem, which is in this case a hashing. And there is no fast way, but you need to just spend time of computing time. They say that is very slow. It actually uses a lot of, can possibly cause global warming if you believe in it. And a few other things. But I think the main thing is the efficiency. Now, of course, it is efficient, but this is the same way that banks are efficient. You can do all the transactions, you can do whatever you want. But that was the whole idea, that we want to go against bank and we have this thing. So this is exactly the similar thing about advertisement on Web3. So in some sense, I think the concept of Web3 probably is more vague than even unified ID that we talk. And this, people have these ideas, but at the end, this is exactly the issue. When you have centralized, you have much more efficiency. When you have distributed, you have lots of overhead. And the question is that how much you want to sacrifice. Of course, this advertisement that we are talking a huge network. Let me ask Nishan. So, by the way, this is actually we are talking mainly at this point about display advertisement. I think probably this will go to the next session as well, and we will continue because there are actually a lot of things that we can talk about. And the display advertisement, you may see, like for example, advertisement at YouTube. And that's the video ads. And as actually Nishan mentioned, you try to avoid it, but I think like how many times I'm seeing this Verizon ad at my YouTube is like amazing. Just this one is coming. And so it's not the case that, and of course, YouTube knows that is me, but still they are doing that. I don't know. I mean, some part of it may be inefficiency of the system, or somehow they want to put it so much such that they force me essentially to go and change my internet from some cable essentially to Verizon. But anyhow, so there is we are not talking about those type of ads. However, display advertisement is the one that when you go to a website, generally a third party is putting the advertisement there. It can be actually the video or some kind of reel or something like this as well, but it is a short video or something like this. These are the display advertisements. So display advertisement has some video and they are more focused on that. But generally you will see these are the text that you are seeing or this kind of creative that you are seeing, and creative can be different. So we talk about display advertisement. Now question, let me ask Nishan, do you know how many, like worldwide, how many display advertisements are generated in like display advertisement requests? It means that somebody will come and you want to ask me, okay, show some advertisement here and pay me as a publisher something. How many requests are generated in 1 hour?
1 hour. Well, I was going to say must be like trillions per second. Right.
Not actually. I think at least it's not that much. But I mean, the one that again I have this information. These are like something like around 2 years ago. It was 65 billion per hour.
Per hour. Okay. Good.
Per hour. So it's not that. I mean, say trillions. I mean, because the issue is that like just you need to think about it. What does it come this? I mean, what is the world population? I don't know, 7-8 billion.
Billion.
And so in some sense, these will be generated because users are going and seeing the websites.
Exactly.
So in some sense, I mean, it cannot be trillions because, I mean, it should be related to the number of people in the world.
Well, I was thinking like, so as kind of moved to the headerless, seems like, now like you can and you probably should like make requests out to more than one of these ad exchanges at one point in time. So for one user's request, there might be multiple bits kind of sent out there.
Yes, there is multiple bits happening, and that's actually very important. But actually, probably we will talk more about it next time. But say, I mean, the original request that, this is, but the current one, I mean, at least 2 years ago, probably now, it's, I don't know, the people maybe is now COVID, and then after COVID, say 65 billion, maybe 100 billion. That's the thing that is generated. And big companies like, for example, Trade Desk, Amazon, etc., maybe they answer only to 10% of this. I think they try to put bits for this type of things. So the big DSPs. So now this, I don't know, this 100 billion, say, these are, I mean, huge number of things. And now you will talk about, and you need to have a very efficient system. Interestingly, this ads like a sponsored product, these are the advertisements that you are seeing, for example, at Amazon or Overstock or others, that you will see some item, they are showing some related item. These are sponsored products. Or there are some like video ads that you will see, for example, at YouTube or other places. Or these are the ones that, I mean, just if we even forget about this type of ad, just the display ads. These are actually, display ads is known to be less, there is less money essentially for display ad comparing to these sponsored products or like sponsored ads or like the video ads at Hulu, at YouTube, etc. So why? Because of the efficiency. Because you need a super efficient, essentially, things. And if you are not careful, that was actually the project that I was involved in at some point. It's like you try to see how efficient actually to bid on the advertisement, because there are so many of them. You may need to spend a lot of money in the compute costs because you need to get, I mean, lots of information about it that, I mean, we mentioned briefly, but we will talk probably next time more. But these things, you need to get it from them and you need to do it efficiently. Now, coming back to this concept of Web3, actually, this is exactly the thing. So now to make, if you want to get all this information, it is very hard. And now to do this, and it needs a lot of computations. This computation probably should be actually currently is done by all this cloud computing, like AWS, Google, or Amazon, as well as actually Facebook. Facebook have also a huge cloud just for themselves actually to do that. So all these clouds are actually doing such that you do a very efficient advertisement. And this, you want to do it essentially on Web3 or any distributed way, that is almost inefficient. And again, between 20 to 120 milliseconds, you should answer it. And you need to have very fast internet. You need to have a lot of compute power, such that this is essentially this concept of advertisement be useful. Yes, there are these ideas that they try to do advertisement that you own essentially about it, not these big companies, they are doing advertisement. Like everyone can do the advertisement, and some of them based on the NFTs, etc. But these are just some ideas. And again, for a startup, maybe you can get some money out of it. But at this point, I don't think it is practical. And indeed, I will see exactly the reverse because of this move of Ethereum that went essentially from mining by any person to only wealthy people now that they can get more money. Because those wealthy money, now wealthy people, or wealthy organization, they can actually mine more. Why? Because they have more stake there. They get more requests because of this, and they can actually do it more. They become richer, not anyone. Now you cannot do mine anymore, even if you have the computers and GPU to do that. So yes, there are these ideas, but not much of the
one other thing I'd like to kind of explore there is so as we kind of talked about the unified ID 2 and stuff, like the question I kind of keep coming back to is like, well, what is the incentive for these companies that are building these solutions out to actually give more control to the user, right? And in that sense, like, I think going back to the conversation with Elton, like, he was kind of mentioning brands are actually really excited about the move to Web3. Why? Because like it at least promises the potential for them to represent their brand agnostic of the platform. So right now, a lot of what they have to do is work on each and every one of these platforms to curate kind of things in regard to their brand, and they're not easily portable. So some of the exciting kind of things he mentioned that's happening in Web3 right now is that once you build out these kinds of graphs and networks, built on this common protocol of blockchain, you're no longer tied to these platforms, and you can kind of coordinate and centralize and own it yourself. So if you kind of take the same concept from a user standpoint, if the user is the brand, if you are the brand, I think one way potentially that I can see it is like, if you curating your brand allows for higher monetization based on your network effects, your kind of the things you're putting out. Let's say you're influencer is I guess the current word, but you can imagine this term, like this concept of influencers spreading out to kind of the quality of these networks that you're managing, and that may be one way to kind of get back more control to the user in terms of how these ad exchanges leverage that information. But again, that to me, one, that's the only kind of feasible route, right? Because then people are actually incentivized to give those controls over to users. But then two, it's not a kind of privacy world. It's a more curated information that's out there from your perspective, as opposed to it just happening on your behalf right now world. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as well.
Yeah. I think Manas, appeared with me that we are like end of the time. So I think let me just say a little bit, the summary of today, and I think that we are talking also the thing that we will talk next month as well. So today we talk about like the cookieless world. We talk about this cookies. We talk a little bit about cookieless world. We talk about the unified ID. We discuss about this concept of SSPs and DSPs. We introduce them. And I mean, we discussed about the relation like to Web3 and other type of things. There are two important things actually we will talk. One is that like in the cookieless world, these companies like Facebook and others, now they are actually other Snap, they try to now do it in the cookieless world and they do the advertisement. How can we do that? That's one important thing. The other one is that we discussed briefly about like around 100 billion display ads are coming. And I want to go a bit dive deep. So what can we do? What are the possible algorithms or others that the people can use it or the companies are using it such that they can answer it? And what are the bottlenecks, why the running time is important, etc. So these are the things that we will talk more next time, hopefully. In the next, we have the third Monday of each month at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And we will talk more about it. And then we have exciting things after that as well that we talk with Nishan. So please join us, I think, ask questions. You can ask, like, if you, especially at YouTube or LinkedIn, you can put it even after the comments. We will see this question and we will answer probably the next time as well. If you have any question after this, please, let us know. I think these are interesting things. It is interesting for me because some of them, again, I read these things on the, some blogs, etc. But this one that I'm saying is a person who has done these things. And I think that is, you will get more benefit, hopefully, out of it. And I think that would be more exciting. It was very exciting for me. This was probably one of the most non-trivial things that I learned in these companies, essentially, especially about display advertising. Okay, so Manas.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mohammad, Nishan. Wow, that was an intense conversation about ad networks, all the way from ad networks, cookie and cookieless worlds to Web3. I wasn't even imagining Web3 to be part of this conversation, but I'm glad we touched upon it. And thank you so much, Dr. Mohammad and Nishan, as usual, being our valued moderators of this webinar. And if anyone is listening to this call, if anyone is listening to this webinar, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, either on YouTube, like Dr. Mohammad mentioned, or you can email at manas@setna.ai, and I will direct your questions to Dr. Mohammad or Nishan, and you will hear back from us.
And I think, I want to add that, we are actually helping the different companies for this type of e-commerce. If you are interested in that one, if you feel a need, we will be more than happy to talk with you on that stuff. Just send an email to Manas, or you can send it directly to me. Just search my name, you will find my wiki, everything. And Nishan as well. LinkedIn is available. And we will be happy actually to help you on those needs that you have especially in e-commerce. We have a team that is strong in that things. Yeah. Exactly.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everyone. And looking forward to our next month's webinar.
Thanks for organizing, Manas.
Thanks. And I think see you later. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.